The world is feeling the effects of the war in Ukraine, from the gas pump all the way to the dinner table. Food prices are rising just about everywhere, and experts say it's happening at an especially bad time.
So it's kind of a perfect storm. It's not just a matter of food prices are going high. It's food prices are going high at a moment when many places are already crippled by the challenges posed by COVID, by political disruptions elsewhere, by droughts and floods and other natural disasters. And there's only so much that people can take before they grow displeased with their political leadership if it's failing to take care of them. So unrest is unfortunately increasingly likely right now.
So how did we get here? Russia is the world's leading wheat exporter. Ukraine is number 5. Together, they grow about a quarter of the world's wheat exports. But when war broke out, the Black Sea became a combat zone. Some cargo ships were hit. It didn't take sanctions to cut off exports.
There wasn't a ban on grain trade, but in effect, the ports were closed. And so shipment has stopped.
Countries that import from Ukraine and Russia have suddenly found their contracts canceled, and they're not getting food shipments they were expecting, which forces them into the market to pay a premium to replace food shipments that just aren't going to arrive, and that bids up the price of food around the world.
But food prices have been rising for almost 2 years now. It's partly because bad weather cut the harvests in some of the world's bread baskets. Reserves are low, and that's helped push prices to record highs even before the conflict started.
We've kind of tipped over that edge where every change, every little thing has a very large impact.
Now Ukraine's next harvest is in doubt. Farmers should be getting ready for the next growing season, but that's hard to do right now.
Logistical lines are obviously heavily disrupted right now, so seeds aren't arriving, fuel isn't arriving, fertilizer isn't arriving.
Russia's farmers are getting hit too. They're not under sanctions, but Russia's banks are, and that basically shuts Russian farmers out of the financial system.
We're not going to say you can't ship grain, but will they ship it if they can't get paid?
Then there's the increase in energy costs that makes shipping everything more expensive. Also, natural gas is a main ingredient in fertilizer, which farmers use to boost crop yields. That means fertilizer costs more to make.
Fertilizer prices last year were already quite high. They had come down somewhat in the last few months and now are very high again, in part because Russia and its ally Belarus are major fertilizer exporters.
And Russia and Belarus are both under sanctions for the invasion of Ukraine. But those are problems for the next crop. Parts of the Middle East and North Africa are feeling the effects right now.
Yemen's a good case in point. There's not a lot of wheat being grown in Yemen. They depend entirely upon wheat imports, and that requires transportation to get there. So the spike in global wheat prices plus the spike in global oil prices mean that prices for flour and for bread products in Yemen are already increasing significantly in a place where people really can't afford to face an even higher cost of feeding their family basic daily rations.
In 2011, rising bread prices were one of the factors that set off the Arab Spring protests. When people already have grievances with their government, food price inflation can push them over the edge. A lot of places fit that description right now.
If you look at Yemen, if you look at Lebanon, if you look at Syria, if you look at South Sudan, if you look at Ethiopia, and I can keep going, these countries are already in trouble because of conflicts.
On the plus side, spring planting hasn't started yet in some of the big wheat-growing countries. Farmers will probably switch some of the land that they plan to plant soybeans or corn to planting wheat. Eventually, that should bring the price down.
That seems to be the main way that these crises are inevitably resolved is by production somewhere else in the world responding. And we are fortunate that we have a global food system. We have the ability to produce and consume commodities like wheat all around the world.
It'll be months before the market has a sense of how big that next harvest will be. In the meantime, it's going to be some nail-biting months of watching the weather. It could be a wild ride.